Listen well, children of the earth, for I will tell you a story that the ancient baobab trees still whisper when the wind carries the scent of the Zambezi River. This is a tale of love that defied the gods themselves, and of secrets that the moon keeps hidden in her silver embrace. Long ago, when the world was younger and the spirits walked freely among mortals, there lived a maiden named Amara in the village of Mupata, where the great Zambezi carved its path through the heart of our ancestors' land. Amara was the daughter of Chief Mukamuri, a man whose word was law from the Copper Hills to the river's edge. Her beauty was spoken of in 7 villages, skin like polished mahogany, eyes that held the depth of still waters, and a voice that could make the weaver birds pause their songs to listen. But beauty, my children, is often a burden disguised as a gift. The village elders had already chosen her fate. She was to marry Chipo, son of the neighboring chief Nyambi, a union that would bring peace between 2 proud peoples who had feuded for 3 generations. The marriage would happen when the next full moon rose over the Zambezi, painting the waters silver with ancient promises. Yet the river had other plans. It was during the season of the flooding rains that Amara first saw him. She had gone to the riverbank at dawn, as was her custom, to collect water in her mother's clay pot, a vessel blessed by her grandmother's grandmother and painted with the symbols of their lineage. The morning mist clung to the water like ancestral spirits reluctant to leave, and through this ethereal veil, she glimpsed a figure standing waist-deep in the current. Django emerged from the Zambezi like a river god himself, water cascading from his powerful frame. He was Lozi, from the floodplains beyond the falls, where his people had learned to read the river's moods like sacred texts. His chest bore the ritual scars of a fisherman, and around his neck hung cowrie shells that sang softly with each movement, a song that spoke of distant shores and forbidden territories. Their eyes met across the sacred waters, and in that moment, the very earth seemed to hold its breath. Amara's clay pot slipped from her fingers, sinking into the shallow reeds with barely a sound. Neither spoke, for there were no words in any language, Shona, Lozi, or Tonga, that could capture what passed between them in that eternal instant. As our ancestors say, the heart that loves knows no tribal boundaries. For 7 mornings, they met in secret at the river's edge. Django would sing to her in his native tongue, songs of the great floods and the fish that danced beneath the surface. Amara would weave him garlands from the river lilies, their white petals like promises made in moonlight. They shared stories of their peoples, his of the annual migrations following the floods, hers of the mountain spirits that guarded her village. Love, like the mighty Zambezi itself, carved its own channel through their hearts. But rivers, dear ones, are not the only things that have eyes and ears. What happens when forbidden love meets ancient duty? Will Amara choose her heart or her heritage? Subscribe and ring that bell to discover the secrets that lie beneath the next full moon over the Zambezi River. Share this tale with someone who believes in the power of love that transcends all boundaries. But the ancestors teach us that no secret can hide forever from the all-seeing eyes of the community, and love, like smoke from the evening fire, cannot be contained within one heart alone. On the 8th morning, as Amara made her way through the elephant grass toward their sacred meeting place, she noticed the silence. No bird calls welcomed the dawn, no rustle of small creatures in the reeds. Even the ever-present hum of insects had ceased, as if the very air held its breath in warning. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind, "When nature falls silent, child, the spirits are preparing to speak." Hidden among the fever trees, old Nihanda watched with eyes that had seen 7 decades of human folly. The village's most respected elder and keeper of ancient wisdom, she had noticed the change in Amara, the way the girl's eyes now held the distant look of one whose heart dwells in 2 worlds. Nihanda had seen such signs before, and they never ended in joy. As the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and gold, Django appeared from across the river in his makoro, the traditional dugout canoe carved from a single mukwa tree. He guided it with the silent skill of his ancestors, reading the current subtle language with practiced ease. But today, something was different. His usually confident movements carried an edge of urgency, and the cowrie shells at his throat trembled with an agitation that matched the quickening of Amara's heart. "My river flower," he called softly in the Lozi tongue, "there are storm clouds gathering that are not made of rain." Amara waded into the shallows, her traditional chitenge dress flowing around her like liquid sunset. "What troubles you, my love? Your eyes carry shadows I have not seen before." Django's hands trembled as he reached for hers. "My father's fishing nets brought in more than tilapia yesterday. They caught whispers, carried downstream from your village. Your people speak of the approaching marriage ceremony, of preparation feasts that will last 3 days. And there are other whispers, darker ones, of a fisherman from the flood plains who dares to pollute their sacred waters with his presence." The word struck Amara like a physical blow. She sank to her knees in the shallow water, the weight of reality crushing the delicate bubble of their secret world. "They know," she whispered, her voice carrying the anguish of 100 broken hearts. "Or they suspect. Oh, Django, what have we done?" From her hiding place among the trees, Nihanda felt her ancient heart contract with familiar pain. She had once been young, had once loved a man from a distant tribe. The scars on her soul from that long-ago choice still ached on nights when the moon was full. Now she faced a decision that would determine not only Amara's fate, but the fragile peace between two peoples. As if summoned by their despair, the wind began to rise, carrying with it the sound of drums from Amara's village, not the joyful rhythms of celebration, but the deep, ominous beats that called the warriors to council. Django's eyes widened as he recognized the pattern, learned from seasons of trading with various river communities. "Those drums," he said, his voice heavy with dread, "they speak of judgment. Someone will face the council before this day ends. Remember this truth, young hearts who hear this tale. When the river changes course, even the strongest trees must bend or break." The lovers clung to each other in the growing dawn light, unaware that their fate was already being decided in the shadowed conversations of elders and the whispered debates of those who value tradition above all else. The Zambezi flowed around them, ancient and eternal, carrying their tears toward an uncertain future. But love, like the river itself, finds a way to carve new channels through even the hardest stone. The drums of judgment echo across the water, and ancient traditions clash with the heart's deepest truths. Will love find a way to flow like the mighty Zambezi, or will it be damned by the weight of ancestral law? Don't miss the next chapter. Subscribe now and let your friends know that the greatest stories are those that speak to the eternal struggle between duty and desire. The great council fire burned bright in the heart of Mapata village as the sun reached its zenith, casting dancing shadows on the faces of those who would decide Amara's destiny. Chief Mukamuri sat upon his throne of carved elephant wood, his weathered hands gripping the armrests as he struggled between his love for his daughter and his duty to his people. The leopard skin draped across his shoulders, symbol of his authority, seemed to weigh heavier than usual on this day of reckoning. Around the sacred circle sat the village elders, their faces painted with white clay in the ancient pattern of judgment. Each carried a staff topped with symbols of their wisdom, Baba Tanguna with his staff of the honey badger, representing fierce protection of tradition, my Chihiro with her staff crowned by the hornbill's beak, symbolizing the sharp eye that sees truth through deception. And among them, silent but watchful, sat old Nihanda, her staff bearing the carved image of the fish eagle, the bird that soars above the river yet dives deep to feed. "Speak, Nihanda," Chief Mukamuri commanded, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "Your eyes have seen what others have missed. Tell us of this shadow that threatens our daughter's honor and our people's future." The ancient woman rose slowly, her joints creaking like old wood in the wind. When she spoke, her voice carried the power of accumulated wisdom and the sadness of hard-won experience. "Great Chief, I have watched your daughter for 8 days. I have seen her heart pulled in 2 directions like a young tree caught between opposing winds." She gestured toward the river, visible through the compound's entrance. "At dawn, when the mist still holds the secrets of night, she meets with one who should be stranger to our people. A Lozi fisherman named Django, son of the flood plains, whose heart beats in rhythm with hers despite the boundaries our ancestors carved between our tribes. A collective gasp rose from the gathered crowd. My Chihira struck her staff against the earth 3 times. This cannot be. The child is promised to Chief Nyambi's son. 3 generations of peace hang in the balance. But Nihanda raised her hand, commanding silence. I have not finished speaking. Yes, they love, and yes, their love defies our laws. But I have seen something else in these 8 mornings of watching. I have seen wisdom in their hearts, respect in their actions, and a gentleness that honors both their peoples. Chief Mukamuri's eyes flashed. Love is not enough to feed the village or protect us from our enemies. The marriage to Chipo will unite our lands, double our strength. One girl's heart cannot weigh more than the survival of hundreds. It was then that a commotion arose at the village entrance. Through the crowd came Django himself, flanked by 2 warriors who had found him waiting at the river's edge, requesting an audience with the chief. His hands were bound with rope made from baobab bark, but his head was held high with the dignity of one who faces his fate without shame. Great chief, Django said, his shona heavily accented but clear, I come not as a thief in the night, but as a man who honors truth above comfort. I have loved your daughter with a heart that is pure, and I offer myself to whatever judgment you deem fit. The crowd murmured in surprise. It was rare for an accused to face judgment voluntarily, rarer still for one from another tribe to show such courage. Chief Mukamuri studied the young man for a long moment. You know the penalty for defiling a chief's daughter before her marriage? I do, great chief. But I also know that we have defiled nothing but the fear that keeps our peoples apart. Amara's honor remains as bright as the morning star. We have shared only words, songs, and the hope that love might build bridges where hatred once carved canyons. From the crowd came Amara herself, escorted by her aunts but moving with the regal bearing of her royal blood. Father, she said, her voice steady despite the tears that traced silver paths down her cheeks, if you would judge us both. For I am as guilty of love as he. As our ancestors teach us, the river that refuses to bend around the rock will find its banks broken in the flood. The council fell silent, the weight of decision heavy in the air. The flames of the sacred fire flickered, casting light and shadow across faces etched with the complexity of human emotion. In that moment, 3 cultures, Shona, Lozi, and the ancient wisdom of the river itself, stood at a crossroads that would determine whether tradition would triumph over the timeless force of true love. In the flickering light of the council fire, fate hangs in the balance. Will ancient wisdom find a way to honor both love and tradition, or must one be sacrificed for the other? The final chapter awaits. Make sure you're subscribed to discover how this tale of forbidden love reaches its stunning conclusion. Share this story with those who believe that sometimes, the heart knows truths that tradition has forgotten. The moon was full that night, casting its silver benediction upon the waters of the Zambezi as if the ancestors themselves had gathered to witness what was to unfold. The entire village had assembled on the riverbank for what many believed would be a night of judgment and sorrow. But old Nihanda, keeper of ancient wisdom, had spent the day in deep meditation with the spirits, and she had returned with eyes that held a different kind of knowing. Chief Mukamuri stood before his people, his face grave in the moonlight. Beside him, bound but unbowed, stood Django, while Amara waited with her head high, ready to share whatever fate awaited her beloved. The promised bridegroom, Chipo, had arrived with his father's delegation, their faces set in hard lines of injured pride and political calculation. Before I pronounce judgment, the chief announced, his voice carrying across the water, Nihanda, our eldest and wisest, would speak. She has communed with the ancestors and the river spirits. Let all listen to her words. The ancient woman stepped forward, her staff striking the earth with each measured step. When she reached the water's edge, she dipped her fingers into the sacred flow and touched them to her forehead, lips, and heart, the ritual greeting of one who seeks to speak truth. My people, she began, her voice somehow reaching every ear despite its softness, tonight we face a choice that will echo through 7 generations. Do we follow the path of fear that has kept our tribes apart, or do we remember the older wisdom that flows beneath all our traditions? She turned to face Django and Amara, her ancient eyes reflecting the moonlight like twin stars. This young fisherman speaks of love building bridges. But I tell you, he speaks greater truth than he knows. For I have searched the sacred stories, the oldest songs that our grandmothers' grandmothers sang. And I have found what we had forgotten. The crowd pressed closer, sensing that history was about to shift like the river changing its course. Long ago, before the great divisions, before the feuds that split families and scattered friends like leaves in the wind, the Shona and Lozi were one people. We were the children of the river, united by the waters that gave us life. Only when drought came and resources grew scarce did we allow fear to carve us into separate tribes, building walls where once there were bridges. Chief Nyambi stepped forward, his voice sharp with challenge. Ancient stories do not feed our children or protect our borders, old woman. The marriage agreement ensures strength for both our peoples. But Nihanda smiled with the patience of one who has outlived many storms. And what if I told you, proud chief, that this love could bring greater strength than any political alliance? What if the ancestors themselves had arranged this meeting of hearts to remind us of our forgotten unity? She gestured toward the moon, full and brilliant above them. See how our grandmother moon shines equally on Shona and Lozi lands? The Zambezi flows through both our territories, caring nothing for the boundaries we have drawn. Even the fish that feed us swim freely from one realm to another. Why then should we cage the hearts of our children in prisons built from old fears? Chief Mukamuri was silent for a long moment, feeling the weight of decision upon his shoulders. Finally, he spoke. What do you propose, wise mother? A new tradition, Nihanda replied, her voice gaining strength. Let these 2 young people be married, not as political pawns, but as symbols of our reunited peoples. Let their union be the first step toward healing the wounds that have festered for too long. And let young Chipo choose freely whether to support this new path or cling to the old grievances. To everyone's surprise, it was Chipo himself who answered. The young man stepped forward, his face thoughtful in the moonlight. I have watched this Django tonight, and I see no enemy in him. I see a man who loves truly and speaks honestly. Perhaps it is time for our peoples to remember that we share the same rivers, the same sky, the same hopes for our children's future. He turned to his father with newfound dignity. I release the maiden Amara from her promise to me. Let her follow her heart, and let her heart lead us toward a better tomorrow. As if responding to this moment of grace, the river itself seemed to sing more softly, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of river lilies across the assembled crowd. Chief Mukamuri looked at his daughter, saw the hope blazing in her eyes like captured starlight, and felt something ancient and hard crumble in his chest. Then let it be so, he declared, his voice carrying both authority and newfound joy. Under this moon of Zambezi, in the sight of our ancestors and the blessing of the river spirits, let Amara and Django be joined not just in marriage, but as bridges between our peoples. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn, with drums and songs that had not been heard for 3 generations, songs of unity, of rivers that flow together, of love that transforms the world. And when the first light of morning painted the waters gold, the Zambezi carried their joy downstream to villages that had forgotten what it meant to be one people. As our ancestors teach us, the wise river does not fight the rocks in its path, it embraces them and makes them part of its song. Years later, when Amara and Django's children played on both banks of the great river, when trade flourished between the reunited peoples, when the old songs of unity were taught once more to eager young voices, the people would remember this night. They would tell the story of how love conquered fear, how the moon of Zambezi witnessed the healing of ancient wounds, and how sometimes, the youngest hearts carry the oldest wisdom. For love, dear ones who have listened to this tale, is not the enemy of tradition, it is tradition's truest teacher, reminding us that beneath all our differences flows the same river of humanity, seeking always to return to the sea of our shared belonging. And so the moon of Zambezi blessed a love that became the foundation for generations of peace and unity. Like and subscribe if this tale reminded you that love truly can conquer all obstacles, and share it with someone who needs to remember that the greatest bridges are built in the human heart. What other wisdom do our ancestors' stories hold? Let me know in the comments which folktale you'd like to hear next, and may your own rivers flow toward love and understanding. **